Welcome to Brookfield Perspectives, a podcast that explores the Brookfield ecosystem's role in creating sustainable wealth on a global scale. On today's episode, we're asking a question that's on many economists' minds. How do we prepare and plan for a world where eventually 1 in 4 Americans will be age 65 or older? Our guests today are Sachin Shah, CEO of Brookfield Wealth Solutions, and Teresa Ghilarducci, professor of economics at the New School for Social Research in New York. They'll shed light on the demographic shifts putting retirement at the front and center of our economy, as well as the tools and trends needed to help people of any age secure their futures. Sachin, Teresa, thanks so much for joining us today. Could you please introduce yourselves?
I'm Teresa Ghilarducci. I'm a professor of economics right now at the New School for Social Research in New York, and I've written a number of books on retirement. I started doing work on retirement as a graduate student at Berkeley and have just continued up to my retirement closer in the future. So I've been doing retirement in America for a very long time.
I'm Sachin Shah. I'm the CEO of Brookfield Wealth Solutions. Our business is also focused on retirement and the aging population in the United States. And we predominantly focus on providing people with annuities and income for life, which has been a growing part of the financial management and wealth management sector in the United States.
I think that's a really good jumping off point to talk a little bit more about this retirement population, because there's both a volume and a velocity point about the retirement population in the United States and how it will grow over time. So can you just give us a little bit of the lay of the land around how this has changed in a very short period of time?
Yeah, well, 40 years ago, the retirement landscape really started to change. And it started to change at the beginning of the baby boomers' careers. And now we've run that 40-year experiment. And the experiment was with do-it-yourself pension plans, with defined contribution, IRAs, 401ks. On top of that were stagnating wages for the bottom 90% of workers. And on top of that was a decline in unions. And that matters for retirement because unions were the institution that promoted defined benefit plans that gave 40% of households in 1992, that cohort of retirees, a guaranteed annuity for life. But now we've come to the end of baby boomers' careers, and we now will see 63 million people between the ages of 50 and 64 who are near retirement. And they're coming into retirement with the threat of Social Security being cut. They're coming into retirement with hardly any defined benefit wealth. And they're coming into retirement with some 401k or IRA wealth that they have no idea how to manage to last for the rest of their lives. So that's the table setting. 63 million Americans who have a very different kind of pension management problem than cohorts before.
Sachin, I know there's obviously a view from your standpoint on this gap, what the need is relative to what's out there.
Sure. I think fundamentally the view is exactly the same in terms of the need. We frame it as 1 in 6 Americans is in that retirement age today, which lines up nicely with your 60 million. And if you look at the curve out the next 20 years, it becomes 1 in 4 really quickly. And people are living longer and people are having fewer children, which means that the pressure on society as a whole to look after an aging cohort is going to increase. And to put that burden on those people who need the help when they retire by just giving them a lump sum and telling them to fend for themselves seems like an impossible task. What are the ingredients for that person to live a financially secure post-retirement period of their life? They need to have obviously some amount that they've saved. Doesn't matter if it's 50,000, 150,000, 200,000. That's irrelevant, but they need to have some amount that they've saved. And I would say 90% of people are not coming from a financial background. They're people who work at a steel mill. They work as teachers. They're firefighters. Those people shouldn't all of a sudden have to become experts at managing money. It seems almost absurd that at the same time that they're ending their career, they've got to understand how to price a stock. So what you need is people with some level of savings matched up with financial products that allow that savings to grow at a reasonable rate, devoid of what happens in the stock market for a long period of time. And then what you need is the people who are offering that product, coming back to a Brookfield, to have substantial capital, to be highly rated, to have a long track record of operating businesses responsibly, and to be able to have the operational and financial skills such that they can be along for the journey with that person for however long they choose to buy that product. And I think our business is really designed around bridging that whole gap and offering people stable income for life with a regular return, some level of tax advantage to it because it's in an insurance product, can do so many things in terms of driving health outcomes, financial security outcomes, estate planning outcomes. We spend much of our time trying to figure out how can we keep these products very simple? How can we ensure that these products are well understood? And then how do we ensure that we build a business that has the capital and the risk management around it such that we're in the best position to serve these people for the next 40 or 50 years? And that would be our business in a nutshell.
Insurance companies make sense. And a big, trusted insurance company makes sense because you have the capital and the experience that you'll be here to pay their annuities for 20, 40 years. There are a lot of people who don't ever worry about taxes or estate planning because they have a median income of under $100,000 and they'll be lucky if they can buy presents for their grandchildren. But they still need annuities. That's what's actually striking to me. Even if you have $50 to $80 to $100,000, you still need some product. The truth is that those 63 million people, half of them are coming into retirement with something other than Social Security, and their median wealth is about $100,000. So I'm looking forward to seeing what a big company like you can do for them.
Yeah, it's funny. What you're instinctively saying actually plays out in the data. So we sell predominantly two products. We sell a very simple product that just pays people a fixed rate for 10 years, and they can then just keep it going, really until death if they choose. It has no bells and whistles. And the average size of the annuity we sell in that product tends to be for lower income demographic folks. And the average size of a deposit or the annuity is $60,000.
Yeah.
60 to 70 in that range.
Total sense.
We also equally sell another product that has some equity upside, some bells and whistles attached to it. And what we're finding is it's more of a mass affluent product.
Yeah.
And there, the average size of our policy is about $150,000. We distribute through almost every channel. We have our own in-house agents, which is actually quite unusual in the sector.
Yeah, it's
we have
interesting.
Approximately 1,000 agents who work for us and who build relationships. So that's number one. And then number two is there's the advisor network. And then number three, there's banks. Banks where people are on their wealth platforms. That's for the more higher income earning people. We have coverage across all three. And I'd say the reason the agent force is so important is because often the agents are the ones who have the relationship with people who can't get onto the bank channels. So it's to a lower income cohort.
Yeah.
And I think for us, it was important that we build across income cohorts because they want different things, they need different things. But I'd say from our vantage point, both products, we still try to ensure they're very simple and they're very long-term. Because if you can create simple long-term products where these folks don't need to feel like they need to be investment experts and they can explain it to their friends, then it drives certainty in the future and that leads to so many good outcomes.
This is beyond the products that you offer. Perhaps you will offer this product, but I've been advocating for it in Congress and with the executive branch, the Department of Labor, for about 15 years. And that's the idea of a bridge annuity. So you take your $70,000 or $60,000 and instead of stretching it out your whole retirement life, you stretch it to a late Social Security age. So if you can get them to not collect Social Security earlier, people will have a 77% increase in their monthly benefit if they wait between 62 and 70. I think a lot of financial planners are telling people to deaccumulate that way. Go first to your 401k and then wait as long as you can for Social Security.
Which is sort of counterproductive to what you're getting at, which is if you wait, you'll actually get a higher Social Security and you'll have even greater certainty. I think you're right. Maybe I'm optimistic in this regard, but I would say the industry is still relatively new. So today, people are just trying to sell these products. Demand is growing every year, but the level of sophistication needs to grow and the outcomes need to be optimized for the retiree as opposed to the intermediary who's trying to sell it. And to get there, I think a combination of regulatory push, government incentives, not incentives per se to anybody, but government frameworks that drive this type of behavior, and then insurance companies all working together to say, hey, can we provide a product where we almost supplement that period where you have to wait between retirement and optimal Social Security in exchange for an annuity that then starts to kick in afterwards.
Right.
I think it'll come because I think the demand will be there, but to create the demand, people need to be educated on optimal outcomes.
I'm hearing you both mention quite a number of groups that are very large and have a lot of influence, the government, private institutions, but a lot of that rests on this fundamental idea of trust, a trust in the system, trust in what's being offered, trust in how it works, alongside this gap in education. So do you have a view on what it's going to take to bring that together?
The decline in trust is coming from two places: a lot of volatility in the stock market, a realization for people that they don't have as much as they thought they would. $60,000 and $50,000? $140,000 really doesn't meet the mark if you want to supplement your Social Security and maintain your living standards. I gulp when my data tells me that, or I have to tell anybody that. Only a large insurance company should be doing this.
Yeah, I think the regulation has a big role to play here. The regulators have grown increasingly sophisticated, and I think this whole industry really should be designed for large-scale players. I don't think it's necessarily healthy for smaller players with less capital to be trafficking in these products because of the nature of the product is you're making a 40-year commitment to somebody.
Right.
So I don't have a view as to how you get there, but I do know that regulators care deeply about this topic. They're very focused on it. There's a level of education and the role of education that the government could drive. If you have 1 in 4 people in this country becoming 65 or over, the government could drive the education campaign around this. And between the regulators and the government and large carriers, there's a lot of work to do just to ensure people really understand what they're getting and they're not being sold something that doesn't actually solve the problem that we're talking about.
You are so right, Sachin. A government regulator really needs to be front and center. One thing that's on the side of annuities is that people really want them. I've done some investigation of the medical, psychological, and economic work on what it means to a family to not have guaranteed income and the benefits to a family of having a stream of benefit for the rest of their lives. If I could just talk about one aspect of the benefits of having your elder parent have a stream of income for the rest of their lives, is that your own financial future as a 40-year-old or 50-year-old is a lot more secure. If you know that you don't have to take some of your kids' college money or some of your own 401k, we see women do that for their mothers and mothers-in-law because your parent has some security and you don't have to watch the stock market. And when you watch the stock market, you don't even know what you're watching. So we've seen about 30% of Black, Hispanic, and low-income workers have younger children, adult children, having to take money out of their accounts or actually cut back on the labor market because of that huge gap. That's where the government has to step in too in long-term care.
That's a real meta layer concept of benefit, right? Financial benefit, mental benefit, the whole long-term planning view. That's something I think in the various roles that you've had at Brookfield, Sachin, you've really seen from a lot of different facets. What is the fit here for this industry with Brookfield?
Whether they just buy a 5-year product because they're just dipping their toe, or they buy a 10-year convert to income for life product, which could be a 30, 40-year relationship, your partner, we view ourselves as the partner to that person, needs to have the financial wherewithal, the operational wherewithal, the risk wherewithal to be able to support that person along the way. That's the business we've been trying to build at Brookfield, recognizing these could be 40-year relationships.
Right.
And what I would say is over time, if the products could actually evolve such that there's periods where the person doesn't need the money, so it just stays in the account, or there's periods where they need a little bit more, that's actually a good thing because then they can optimize outcomes. And what I've been telling my teams is just when you're out there talking to advisors, when you're talking to wealth planning people, even encouraging retirees or near retirees to dip their toe in the water with just a 5-year product is a good place to start. If you buy a 5-year product and 5 years from now, you got what you signed up for and you're only 53, it gives you a ton of confidence before you hit retirement to do it again. This time you might do 10 years.
Right, and optimize a little bit.
Right, and you might say, actually, I'm going to buy 10 and maybe I'll have the option to annuitize it. So I think this is the kind of thing where what I hope is that our products actually start to appeal to younger people, maybe in their 40s, not even their 50s. And it's more of a dip your toe in the water strategy. And what you're doing is you're building their knowledge base around the trust of the annuity and the counterparty, not around the stock market.
I want to summarize. I think you said, look, people are going to need to have money and security in old age. And you also implied that you want to help them with the accumulation phase. So as early as possible, if you can get 30-year-olds, time is on their side.
Yeah.
So much better.
So much better.
And that you want to help them with the accumulation and the growth phase, the investment growth phase. And you're there to help them with the deaccumulation phase.
Yes, which is true partnership, right?
And that's in a way mimicking what defined benefit plans had done before. Unfortunately, we've had 40 years where people have constructed their own portfolio with products that their employer put together. So people had 72 options of some kind of public equity account. I mean, we had really very suboptimal portfolios. So they didn't actually grow what they were accumulating. And because the structure of government regulation is such that we're the only country that people can take out tax-favored retirement accounts before retirement to remodel a kitchen, to do whatever. Their lives have immediate need for money, but other countries and the defined benefit system and Social Security are such that you plan for those needs someplace other than your money that's meant to last your lifetime. It's especially harmful for women who have 401ks because it seems the literature is showing us that a 401k for a woman is seen as the family nest egg to be used during your children's and your life. And the husband's is the true retirement planning. Well, marriages don't last as long as annuities, and it's not a good portfolio bet for a woman. So getting rid of that loophole would be really good. The only way that people will even have a chance of having enough is to start saving early. That matters even more than the rate of return, but rate of return matters a lot. You have some things on your side. I've never seen a generation of younger people more financially aware. So you have Gen Z seeing their baby boomers' parents in a huge mess and a lot of anxiety and a lot of student debt. Many boomers are moving into their retirement years with substantial student debt for their own.
I'm curious because you're very steeped in the data and a lot of the research that's going on in real time. Are there other aspects that has surprised you, encouraged you, had you take a look at this in a way you didn't expect?
A lot more interest among younger people, a lot more financial savvy. And I don't think it has much to do with the financial education in school. There's only a couple of places where people pay attention to finances keenly. You have to find those teaching moments. And it's not in fourth grade when you're doing
your lemonade stand.
Right, present value calculations in fourth grade.
Yeah, in spite of how much I try teaching my kids about anything, you're right.
They're not paying attention. You have to find
Yeah.
the teaching moment. So you can really teach the value of compound interest. Everybody should know that. That's magic, total magic. But instilling confidence that you can manage a portfolio into your 70s, 80s, and 90s is just not possible. Half of the people who are aging will be in some cognitive decline. The first stages of cognitive decline is missing paying bills or being susceptible to fraudsters, scammers. So it's hard enough to do the math, but to do it when you're alone and old and maybe challenged with memory issues is really nasty. The rate of financial scamming has almost doubled in the last 4 years, and it will only increase as people start taking their 401ks out of their income. And every elder knows it, and elders fall for it. There was an article I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, of a financial advisor who actually sent money to get his grandkid out of jail. Of course, that was a scam. It was a call, and he says, I knew it the moment I did it, that
Wow.
I was taken. So the scammers know you better than you know yourself, and they're very good at it. And if you have an annuity, you're only at risk for that monthly check. You're not at risk for your whole lump sum.
Well, look, today, if you read the paper, there's more print dedicated to crypto than there is to annuities.
I'm not surprised.
So that tells you a lot
Yeah.
about the level of knowledge that's out there. Every 30-year-old who's not in finance probably should have a little bit of an annuity in their portfolio as part of their forced way of savings. Because to your point, compounding is the magic of finance, and it's going to grow for the next 30 years, and they're going to retire and be thankful that they put away a little bit of money every year. And yet you talk to a 30-year-old and they're asking you what the price of Bitcoin is.
Yeah, right.
Right? So this is where, when you talk about policy and education and the government's role, this is where I think the role should be played. It's on the education of safer outcomes for the mass of people. Because if you did that, it would drive so many ancillary benefits around healthcare, stress, physical education. All these things are all connected. And I think you're spot on. Young people need to also be educated that annuities, simple annuities, and certainty of compounding is something that they shouldn't shy away from. It actually will help them.
And some people have parents that give them that financial savvy as an inheritance or a bequest, and other people don't. So having to manage money this way, having to know when to start saving, feeling secure enough to save when you're a 25-year-old, really is a very difficult way to expect people to be secure in old age. So there has to be some safeguards. I'm trying to get my universities to allow graduate students into annuity products. I taught a freshman class, a first-year seminar at Notre Dame, and it was in the fall. And at the end of the class, one of my students says, I'm asking my parents for an annuity. I asked her about that. Remember, she has boomer parents. They had no idea what that was. In fact, they weren't savers.
Right.
They were debtors. And so they might have been talking at odds. The government rules, signposts, packaging, even the language of Social Security can really change and help behavior. Before I came here today, I read a brand new study that was published this year on the impact of annuities on workers' lives. There was an experiment that had two groups and constructed it so that one group were really primed to choose annuities when they retired, and the other group were primed to go lump sum and manage it on their own. And they found that over time, the group that expected to get an annuity changed their health behavior. They said that they would actually pay more for a more extensive checkup. And then when they put them in a lab and told them this didn't have anything to do with the experiment, but they just wanted to see their exercise rate, the group that expected to get an annuity actually exercised faster. And so there's kind of a fatalism and a sense of not having control if you have to manage your own money, because many things that happens to that money is out of your control. So one indication of that is to take a Hail Mary, buy lottery tickets, or go into crypto. There's this sense that the only thing I have on my side is maybe I'll be lucky. And someone with an annuity actually has a whole architecture of their life that's completely different, that I think we're going to find more and more psychological effects. There are other studies that have tried to find similarly situated people, control for everything they can control for, except whether or not they got their pension through an annuity or they got it through a lump sum. They're picking up differences between these two groups. The group with an annuity will report more satisfaction with their retirement, especially as they age. And they report a higher level of subjective well-being on a number of measurements.
I'm only hearing positive effects, really from all sides. What do either of you feel is one of the single biggest contributors to really starting to close this gap outside of education and accessibility to annuities? Is there a nitro button somewhere?
No, I got into this 5 years ago and my eyes opened up because I would have thought this is a no-brainer. Why are more people not buying this? It makes complete logical sense for financial security. And the regulations are by and large very good. They require you to hold a lot of capital. And to sell this, you need to be rated. All of our carriers are A-rated. 50 states across the US regulate us. And all of our information is in the public domain. So I would have thought, well, if you have transparency, you have capital, you have a rating, and you're leading the industry in terms of your ability to deliver these products, why are they not sold more? I still can't quite figure it out. I think what it is that it's not part of the regular financial discourse every day. People love to talk about stock markets. Even people who don't know a lot about stock markets talk about NVIDIA is going up or it's going down. And this is where I come back to, I think, a coordinated national campaign around the importance of these products to help people bridge the years towards retirement actually could help. We've had coordinated government-led campaigns on so many things. Say no to drugs. That was a coordinated campaign. So why not financial security? Why not planning for retirement? Today, when you look at commercials around annuities, they're just done by the individual insurance company and two people around a table. But why not actually have this as a really meaningful part of the dialogue? And even with younger folks, so much of the dialogue today is about how you're going to pay back your student debt. At the same time, there could be a tie back to, well, how are you going to save for your future? Maybe there's policy initiatives that drive, if you're able to do that, you get some sort of tax benefit that then can go to paying off your student debt. There's so many things you can do that are creative here.
Maybe. I think you're up against a couple of things. One is trust in for-profit financial firms. There's actually a lot of distrust of 401ks. So having an insurance company tell you in an ad that this is a good thing, even though it is, you need another validator. Also, and I think too much emphasis is on this, but you're up against human nature, where most people think they're going to die sooner than they actually are. And that's probably because the generation before them did die sooner than their average expected life. And they don't realize how expensive that is. We should pay attention to teaching moments. It's probably not when you're watching a soccer game and you get an ad from an insurance company. It's at the point that you start saving at your workplace. Even if there isn't an annuity product in a 401k, the importance of saving for a guaranteed income could be part of what employers do. And I think big employers actually do that.
one of the fundamental tenets of finance is still diversification. And I think the diversification discussion over the last 70, 80 years has been stocks and bonds. The reality is that conversation needs to be much more nuanced today, where it's stocks and bonds, but now it's annuities and a guaranteed income. And by the way, there should be some alternative assets in there. And you need to have this diverse portfolio. And depending on your income level, the layers at which you can think about it are more detailed. I just think that we've always had this very binary stocks and bonds, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for most people.
It is. And I'm curious, because we've started to enter this sector in other countries. Is there anything to learn from systems that are not where we sit in this exact moment in Canada or in the UK or others that can give us maybe some of that foresight into where there's some white space?
Yeah, in both Canada and the UK, I would say it's very similar to the US. And I would say maybe the social safety net in the US is a bit more vulnerable, given the size of the population and just a much bigger place.
Yeah.
So I would say the need to educate and really change the dialogue is much more pressing here because of the size of the marketplace here.
There's that too. Other countries don't let you take your money out of your retirement accounts before retirement if they're going to give you a tax break for it. And that really changes the framing, that this is money for your retirement, not all those other things that you need. And therefore structuring it so it lasts your retirement.
Well, and it goes back to this point you're making about human nature and the whole context setting around it.
But I don't want to overestimate that. We have researched what you have defined, but we call it an annuity puzzle, where people really want guaranteed income, but they don't buy the product. So that's the puzzle. And too much emphasis has been on that miscalculating life expectancy.
Sure.
A lot of it is the trust in the insurance industry, where government really doesn't help saying what an A-rated insurance company is or what a B-rated is. It really doesn't help.
And you're still going back to this concept of trust. Once the education is there and once the understanding of access is there, you still have to inherently trust that this insurance company will do right by you over that very long period of time. And figuring out what those core tenets are and how to communicate them seems like the cornerstone of this.
You know, it could end with this cohort. The last cohort, the last generation, the baby boomer generation, was not well served by government regulation and by the industry. Their kids and their grandkids are seeing the result of that.
Yeah.
Something has to change so that this generation trusts their Social Security more and trusts that the money they're putting aside for their retirement will have a 40-year or 60-year relationship with them. We saw it before, so we can do it, but it does require a big change.
And one of the potential ways to do that is to actually have the decision made at the employer level. So right when you enter the workforce, employers are not just offering you a matching program, but are also training and educating you around allocation to annuities, because it's hard at 60 or 65 to start to trust some entirely new third party.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's a difficult decision.
Yeah.
It's almost as difficult as what stock to buy, right?
Yeah.
But if you work for a large multinational and you're already trusting that this account I'm putting my money in is safe, and it comes with various product recommendations, an annuity should just be on the shelf as a product recommendation, and the employer should be the one vetting the trustworthiness of that annuity. And that will allow people to get comfortable with it, such that as they get later in their lifetime, it's not a foreign product anymore. It's something they've been doing for a long time.
We can go a step further. Perhaps your target group are employers. If you look at the flow of funds of the Federal Reserve, most retirement money that you accumulate at the workplace were in guaranteed investment contracts. And those were the contracts your employer bought for you.
Yes.
So there's a concept. Instead of putting so much money matching to a forlorn 401k, the employers could start buying these annuity contracts.
And providing the same matching program.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Which would solve a lot of problems, because if you're matching 6% as an example, and you're getting it into a tax-deferred insurance account, it's the same tax benefit as the 401k, and you've already started to help that person planning for their long-term retirement plans.
Employers care about their employees' financial futures. They may be the first to do it and lead the way. So actually, employers may be one of your biggest markets.
Looks like we're coming up to a solution here.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the 2.0 version of this podcast. We go out and we try to talk to employers.
We solved it.
And try to encourage them to actually do this.
Yeah, employers are usually dropped out of this conversation. It's between worker advocates, retiree advocates, industry advocates, and employers are often forgotten.
You're right. And when I said it's the carrier and the person, the individual with the relationship, and there's 8 layers between, the employer is nowhere to be seen in that.
And they're trusted. And the teaching moment is when you're at the workplace. even workers who are in debt should be financially counseled to save for their retirement. I know there's a whole industry around advising new doctors and athletes. Athletes usually aren't in debt by the time they're done, but doctors are wholly in debt, but they're going into a high-income management. And they're scientists, they're not numbers people. But they say, don't think that you're responsible by paying down your medical student debt and then save for retirement.
It's a bit of everything.
Yeah, and if you told those doctors in fourth grade about compound interest, that's not the teaching moment. So we have to find those moments in life.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Walking away from this conversation, it sounds like there's one or two really important things for big institutions to know and to take away, and maybe for individuals. What sticks in your mind?
I would frame it this way. The need today is very real and growing for these products in scale. The general population in the US deeply needs this. That's the problem we're trying to solve, number one. Number two is the desire by companies like Brookfield to offer these products in a simple way where you have a relationship for a very long period of time that actually solve the need is also available in scale. So we have a need that we've identified and we have somebody who's offering a solution. And what we need now is a strategy that educates people, incentivizes people to procure these products, and ensures that through education and incentives, trust grows as opposed to diminishes, that these will be there for the long term, and regulation has a role to play in all of that. And I think if you could do that, it's a $400 billion market today, annuities, but it should comfortably be $2 trillion, if not more.
There are humanitarian reasons to have annuities, and people instinctively know that they will be better off in retirement if they have annuities.
The demographics here are inevitable. This is partially what's going on with the people that exist today and all those that will come after. So it's really about learning from what we've seen and potentially not repeating that again.
We really had a bad run there. A 40-year experiment with a unique pension design. No other country adopted it quite like us. Canada and UK do have some aspects, but most of the savings is mandatory and it's actually saved and managed by the government. So the United States really stands out, and this is a time for us for self-reflection and not pass on that legacy, stop that inheritance of harm and anxiety and indebtedness.
Well, thank you both for joining us today. It was great to have you. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Cautionary statement regarding forward-looking statements and information. All references to dollars are to US dollars. This letter to shareholders contains forward-looking information within the meaning of Canadian provincial securities laws and forward-looking statements within the meaning of the U.S. Securities Act of 1933, the U.S. Securities Exchange Act of 1934, Safe Harbor provisions of the United States Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995, and in any applicable Canadian securities regulations, collectively, forward-looking statements. Forward-looking statements include statements that are predictive in nature, depend upon or refer to future results, events or conditions, and include, but are not limited to, statements which reflect management's current estimates, beliefs and assumptions regarding the operations, business, financial condition, expected financial results, performance, prospects, opportunities, priorities, targets, goals, ongoing objectives, strategies, capital management and outlook of Brookfield Corporation and its subsidiaries, as well as the outlook for North American and international economies for the current fiscal year and subsequent periods, and which in turn are based on our experience and perception of historical trends, current conditions and expected future developments, as well as other factors management believes are appropriate in the circumstances. The estimates, beliefs, and assumptions of Brookfield Corporation are inherently subject to significant business, economic, competitive, and other uncertainties and contingencies regarding future events and as such, are subject to change. Forward-looking statements are typically identified by words such as expect, anticipate, believe, foresee, could, estimate, goal, intend, plan, seek, strive, will, may, and should, and similar expressions. In particular, the forward-looking statements contained in this letter include statements referring to the impact of current market or economic conditions on our business, the future state of the economy, or the securities market, the Castle Lake acquisition, including its expected impact on our business, the anticipated allocation and deployment of our capital, our liquidity and ability to access and raise capital, our fundraising targets, our target growth objectives, and our target carried interest. Although Brookfield Corporation believes that such forward-looking statements are based upon reasonable estimates, beliefs, and assumptions, actual results may differ materially from the forward-looking statements. Factors that could cause actual results to differ materially from those contemplated or implied by forward-looking statements include, but are not limited to: 1. Returns that are lower than target. 2. The impact or unanticipated impact of general economic, political, and market factors in the countries in which we do business. 3. The behavior of financial markets, including fluctuations in interest and foreign exchange rates and heightened inflationary pressures. 4. Global equity and capital markets and the availability of equity and debt financing and refinancing within these markets. 5. Strategic actions including acquisitions and dispositions. The ability to complete and effectively integrate acquisitions into existing operations and the ability to attain expected benefits. 6. Changes in accounting policies and methods used to report financial condition, including uncertainties associated with critical accounting assumptions and estimates. 7. The ability to appropriately manage human capital. 8. The effect of applying future accounting changes. 9. Business competition. 10. Operational and reputational risks. 11. Technological change. 12. Changes in government regulation and legislation within the countries in which we operate. 13. Governmental investigations and sanctions. 14. Litigation. 15. Changes in tax laws. 16. Ability to collect amounts owed. 17. Catastrophic events such as earthquakes, hurricanes, and pandemics. 18. The possible impact of international conflicts and other developments including terrorist acts and cyber terrorism. 19. The introduction, withdrawal, success, and timing of business initiatives and strategies. 20. The failure of effective disclosure controls and procedures and internal controls over financial reporting and other risks. 21. Health, safety, and environmental risks. 22. The maintenance of adequate insurance coverage. 23. The existence of information barriers between certain businesses within our asset management operations. 24. Risks specific to our business segments including asset management, wealth solutions, renewable power and transition, infrastructure, private equity, real estate, and corporate activities. And 25. Factors detailed from time to time in our documents filed with the securities regulators in Canada and the United States. We caution that the foregoing list of important factors that may affect future results is not exhaustive, and other factors could also adversely affect future results. Readers are urged to consider these risks, as well as other uncertainties, factors, and assumptions carefully in evaluating the forward-looking statements, and are cautioned not to place undue reliance on such forward-looking statements, which are based only on information available to us as of the date of this letter or such other date specified herein. Except as required by law, Brookfield Corporation undertakes no obligation to publicly update or revise any forward-looking statements, whether written or oral, that may be as a result of new information, future events, or otherwise. Past performance is not indicative nor a guarantee of future results. There can be no assurance that comparable results will be achieved in the future, that future investments will be similar to historic investments discussed herein, that targeted returns, growth objectives, diversification, or asset allocations will be met, or that an investment strategy or investment objectives will be achieved because of economic conditions, the availability of appropriate opportunities, or otherwise. Target returns and growth objectives set forth in this letter are for illustrative and informational purposes only, and have been presented based on various assumptions made by Brookfield Corporation in relation to the investment strategies being pursued, any of which may prove to be incorrect. There can be no assurance that targeted returns or growth objectives will be achieved. Due to various risks, uncertainties, and changes, including changes in economic, operational, political, or other circumstances, beyond Brookfield Corporation's control, the actual performance of the business could differ materially from the target returns and growth objectives set forth herein. In addition, industry experts may disagree with the assumptions used in presenting the target returns and growth objectives. No assurance, representation, or warranty is made by any person that the target returns or growth objectives will be achieved, and undue reliance should not be put on them. Cautionary statement regarding the use of non-IFRS measures. This letter to shareholders contains references to financial measures that are calculated and presented using methodologies other than in accordance with IFRS. These financial measures, which include distributable earnings, as defined below, its components and its per-share equivalent, should not be considered as the sole measure of our performance, and should not be considered in isolation from, or as a substitute for, similar financial measures calculated in accordance with IFRS. We caution readers that these non-IFRS financial measures or other financial metrics are not standardized under IFRS, and may differ from the financial measures or other financial metrics disclosed by other businesses, and as a result, may not be comparable to similar measures presented by other issuers and entities. We make reference to distributable earnings, which refers to the sum of distributable earnings from our asset management business, distributable operating earnings from our insurance solutions business, distributions received from our ownership of investments, realized carried interest and disposition gains from principal investments, net of preferred share dividends and equity-based compensation costs. We also make reference to distributable earnings before realizations, which refers to distributable earnings before realized carried interest and disposition gains from principal investments, and net operating income, which refers to the revenues from our operations less direct expenses before the impact of depreciation and amortization within our real estate business. Our outlook for growth in distributable earnings assumes growth in fee-related earnings and realized carried interest in line with our business plans, which assume growth in our fee-bearing capital consistent with our fundraising plans, capital deployment expectations, maintaining the fee rates we earn on fee-bearing capital and earning margins consistent with our current margin. Actual results may vary materially and are subject to market conditions and other factors and risks set out above. For more information on non-IFRS measures and other financial metrics, see Brookfield Corporation's Q1 2024 press release, which includes reconciliations of these non-IFRS financial measures to their most directly comparable financial measures calculated and presented in accordance with IFRS.
Audiation.